Hello, this is Julie Hand, Assistant Director with the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and I'm here with Jamie Morris, Clinical Administrator for the Division of Developmental Disabilities. We are presenting part 2 of our Enhanced Rate Approval and Follow-Up series. Today we'll be focusing on the follow-up and support and monitoring the progress of participant outcomes in conjunction with enhanced rates and funding. We want to make sure that all participants have muted their lines to minimize the audio feedback. You can use the chat box in the lower left-hand corner of the Skype meeting dialog box to enter questions as we go, but we will wait to answer questions until the end of the presentation to make sure we get through all of the information. We are recording today's presentation and we'll re-record the enhanced rate approval webinar that we did at the end of May and post both of the recordings on our DDD website. We're going to progress through the slides here. And just as a reminder, we did talk about this during the enhanced rate approval webinar, but we want to just remind participants today that part of the reason for our revisions to the policy and procedures regarding enhanced rates was due to an enhanced rate review by the Department of Social Services, Division of Medical Services, for choices waiver services, and around 30 participants who are receiving enhanced funding. So that review resulted in recommendations within 3 categories, including system changes, training, and operational enhancements. To provide a little bit more detail regarding those recommendations, within system changes, there were 2 recommendations. One, to update and implement enhanced funding policies to include standard forms, and a case manager awareness of enhanced funding and clear descriptions of those supports within the ISP. Under training, ensuring that providers receive training on rates restrictions, restoration plans, documentation of behaviors and goals, which are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And within operational enhancements, recommendations to create and implement a record retention policy within DHS, assure all policies, forms, and reports are current and accessible to recipients, guardians, advocates, and providers, and to facilitate a system environment in which standardized assessments will be created for providers' use. So again, we have been working on these procedures for around a year, and in the midst of that is when the Medicaid, the Medical Office of Medical Services reviewed these. So that really reinforced for us the need to update the procedures. We wanted to make sure we originally started revising the forms and steps to reflect the implementation of case management, because all of the policies that had been distributed and implemented prior to now were created prior to the implementation of conflict rate case management. So really, we had already identified the need for case manager awareness and that it was necessary to include them in the process and for ISPs to be reflective of those supports. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Morris, who will talk with you and describe more in more detail the follow-up and support that we have planned.
Okay, so we wanted to make sure and explain some of the terminology that will be used throughout the monitoring, the follow-up and support process. One of those is the reference to existing group, and what that means is when a participant who has not been in a group is joining a group that has already been previously approved and in existence. So that might happen because their participant left and created a vacancy, or it might be because they're increasing capacity, adding another person to the group. whichever reason, when a person joins a previously approved group, one that was approved prior to June 1, 2019, then we're calling that little group existing group. The next part is the new group, which is any first time request for a group enhanced rate. This group hasn't been receiving one in the past. There has been a request and a desire to work with a group of individuals, and they're requesting that enhanced rate to provide services. So there's also what's called the previously existing enhanced rates, and there are several enhanced rates that have been in existence for quite some time that have been approved at various times in the past. Those are any of those enhanced rates are any that occur before June 1st, 2019. And
I just want to point out really quickly that the practice, it's been the division's practice over the past several years to request information for participants who are joining those existing group programs. So this isn't necessarily something new, but again, we've sort of refreshed the procedures and to hopefully reinforce consistent implementation.
okay.
Sorry, go on.
The fourth term that we're talking about here is the Intervention Support Specialist, known as an ISS right now. These individuals were formerly known as the Division of Developmental Disabilities Resource Coordinators, and their role has been shifted and reformatted and are now referred to as Intervention Support Specialists, and you will see that they are pretty involved in both the approval and the support and follow-up for enhanced rates. They are currently and will continue to receive training in various areas such as behavior support, maybe possibly some mental health, and analyzing behaviors and anything related to that, identifying where those behaviors are coming from. So those are just some of the terms that you'll see throughout the PowerPoint and throughout the process in general.
So one of the other terms that you may see throughout the presentation, we have some screenshots of some of the progress reports as well, is the concept of the life domains. And so this is really terminology borrowed from Charting the Life Course framework and is intended to look at the person's entire life, although we recognize that there are usually specific areas within these domains that have triggered the need for enhanced rate and supports. So to provide a brief summary, and I would say that the progress report documents will provide a bit more detail as far as what each of these domains encompass. We wanted to just give a brief summary. So daily life and employment is really what a person does as part of everyday life, including school, employment, volunteering. Community living includes where and how someone lives. So that is the physical space where they reside, transportation, accessing other community resources. Safety and security is really that personal safety, either in the person's home or within the larger community. It may be in the workplace, and this also encompasses the person making their own decisions. So this would include emergencies, ensuring your own well-being in that situation. It also encompasses, excuse me, issues of, guardianship and making decisions. Healthy living includes an overall healthy lifestyle and learning the healthy habits necessary to live that lifestyle, including but not limited to medical, physical health, mental health, and overall wellness. Social and spirituality really encompasses the aspect of having friends, personal connections, social capital, and includes specific topics such as leisure activities, personal networks, your faith community, the places where the person is connected in their home, in their neighborhood, in the larger community. And then lastly, we have citizenship and advocacy, which is really about building valued roles in one's community. So again, making those choices, setting goals, advocating either for themselves, for others, or on a larger scale. So we've included these in the follow-up documents that we're asking be submitted once an enhanced rate is approved. Again, just as to reinforce the fact that although I would say many enhanced rates are submitted initially because there's either a safety and security and or healthy living type need to support that person, we want to make sure that the person's whole life is considered and those other areas don't fall to the wayside as the team focuses on those specific support needs.
Okay. The next slide shows the 3 types of enhanced rates that you might see. And they're laid out so you can compare what's required for each one. We have the individual in the first column, and it's laid out. This is, of course, that person that's new to getting an enhanced rate. And so at 3 months, the CSP would be submitting a document that we will reference and show you later. At 6 months, that document is also required to be submitted, but then an on-site follow-up will occur. At 12 months, the CSP submits the follow-up and support progress document, and then at 18 months, that same document, but with the additions of progress and an on-site follow-up will occur. And finally, at 24 months, the CSP does again submit the progress document with how that individual has progressed. The next column talks about a new group, one that's new to coming into existence, and it's the same similar process as in the individual, the same intervals and same steps apply. The third column, however, is that where an individual is joining an existing group. And so here's the difference here. At 6 months, that progress document will be submitted for the participant that joined that group, and an on-site follow-up will occur. After that 6-month document, then that individual will be absorbed into the group, and it becomes that previously existing group that will be monitored, and we will show you that process here shortly. So we thought it'd be beneficial for you to see an example, and also included on this slide is a snapshot of the first page of the 902 form, which is the individual enhanced rate monitoring document, progress monitoring document. And so we're using Sally today as our example. For example, with Sally, if her enhanced rate is approved effective July 13, 2019, then according to the cycle that is followed, 3 months after that will be when any other type of progress monitoring will occur. And so that would be in October. The CSP would be submitting that DHS DD 902 form, which is the picture you see on the screen. And at 6 months, which would be in January of 2020, the CSP submits the 902 form, and an on-site follow-up will occur to provide technical assistance and support for that individual. A year, which would fall into July of 2020, the CSP submits the 902 form, which is continuing to document the progress of the individual. At 18 months, which would be January 2021, the 902 form is submitted, and then an on-site follow-up will occur with that individual. 24 months, which would be the 2-year mark, July 2021, the CSP submits the DHS DD 902 form. And the 2 following bullets there are just to show, and we want to make sure that we clarify, that all of those intervals listed above, the the Division of Developmental Disabilities will be reviewing the ISP monitoring that the case manager completes on that individual. The other item that's important to note is that after that first year, the 6-month interval duration will occur for the duration of the enhanced rate.
A couple things I want to point out before we move on. For some of you who recall some of our previous procedures, Policy Memo 1105 outlines monthly updates for individual enhanced rates for the first 6 months the rate is in effect, and then quarterly thereafter, and then quarterly for the first year, for the duration of the first year, and then annually after. So within the first year, there's certainly a decrease in the frequency of reporting, and then it remains consistent at that 6-month check-in thereafter. The other thing that I think Jamie might have pointed out, but the updates really correlate to the benchmarks outlined in the original request. And so DDD and ISPs should also expect some of those benchmarks to be somewhat flexible. We do want to see those outlined in the original request, but we expect those to evolve over time. And so if the benchmark within the update has done that evolving, we really just want to see some description as to why and how the team came to the agreement on the new benchmark identified. So you'll see kind of in that middle column within those tables in the screenshot, it duplicates or mirrors, I suppose, that request format where the teams are identifying the benchmarks for the person.
Okay. So the next example that we have to show you is when that individual is joining that existing group. And you'll notice that the screenshot is the same form, the 902 form, which is what we would be, a document that we'd be using to demonstrate that. So if the individual joins the existing group in July of 2019, then 6 months from that, in January 2020, the CSP would be submitting this 902 for that participant that joined the group, and an on-site follow-up will occur. After that check-in, the monitoring of the individual will be absorbed into what the existing group will look like and that schedule. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Again, important to remind you that at all these intervals, the Division of Developmental Disabilities will be reviewing those ISP monitoring documents that the case manager completes. Okay, the next example is of when a new group comes into existence for an enhanced rate. You'll notice the screenshot is a little different, and this is referred to as the DHS DD 904 form. This is a new group in 905, sorry, apologize. So it's the 905. And this, if we were to say that this new group came into existence in July 13th of 2019, then 3 months out would be October of that same year. And then the CSP would submit this 905 progress document. At 6 months, which would fall into January of 2020, they submit this 905, but they also have an on-site follow-up for that group to see if any support or technical assistance can be provided. 12 months would make that July 2020, and the CSP submits this 905 showing the progress being made by that group. 18 month would be January 2021, and the CSP is submitting the 905 form, and an on-site follow-up would occur. At 24 months, which would make it July 2021, the CSP is completing and submitting the DHS DD 905 for that group. Again, as on the previous slides, we talked about the intervals, and at all those intervals, the ISP monitoring documents will be reviewed by the Division of Developmental Disabilities. It's also important to note that this enhanced rate, after it finishes the first year, will be monitored or supported technical assistance for the duration of the enhanced rate, and that'll occur on every 6 months of it. So transition rate, which we're wanting to provide support and technical assistance for individuals that are transitioning out of an ICF, such as SDDC, or if they're coming out of HSC. So the intent and purpose here is to make sure to be able to provide support to that community support provider and to provide support for the individual so that they are successful in their living arrangement that's in the community. We want to make sure that that success is continues to happen. So at 3 months from when they transition out, a phone call to discuss their progress and to determine if supports are needed will take place. At 6 months, an on-site follow-up with that individual will occur. At 12 months, again, we'll have that phone call to check in to see how things are doing, if there's any support that's needed. After that, it's a 6-month interval, and so at 18 months, the CSP would be submitting the 902, which is the individual monitoring progress document that we discussed a little bit earlier, and some on-site follow-up will also occur. 24 months will be just the submitting of the 902 form. And once again, the same bullet about the reporting or the ISP monitoring is on there. And also important to point out that after that first year, that interval will be 6 months for the duration of that enhanced rate. So just an example of what the transition rate might look like. So if John's enhanced rate is effective in July of 2019, again, that 3-month marker would be in October of 2019. This phone call would incorporate the CSP, of course. If they're coming from SDDC, it'd be the SDDC case manager, transitional case manager, excuse me, their case manager currently, the program specialist for that community support provider, and the clinical administrator. At 6 months, which would make that January 2020, January 2020, then on-site follow-up will occur just to check in to see if there's anything more we can provide assistance with. At 12 months of July, so that make it July 2020, that phone call with the same parties would be conducted just to check in, see if there's anything we can do to support. And this is where those 6-month intervals start. So at 18 months, so it would make January 2021, the enhanced rate DHS DD 902 form would be the one that's completed, and an on-site follow-up would occur. And then 6 months after that, which would make July 2021, they would be submitting that progress document 902. Okay. And so here's where we get to the enhanced rates that were approved prior to June 1, 2019. These were previously existing enhanced rates, and what we're providing now is annual support and technical assistance by our staff. And this would look, as it says in the next bullet, that each CSP would have a designated month that this would occur, and that would be provided to the community support provider in advance. So 30 days notice, and the following details will be provided to them. The 904, which is what that form is in the screenshot, would be completed for each individual that is receiving the enhanced rate, or if it's a group enhanced rate, it would be completed for the group that is receiving it. Again, the quarterly monitoring is reviewed. On-site follow-up will occur during that month that's been outlined to the community support provider. And then again, technical assistance can be provided that's outlined by the ISP team or the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Those on-site visits and support can occur, and many things can be happening with that. But it's meant to be a support and guidance and technical assistance so that we can help all of our participants have their good life and stay in the placement in the residential that they're living in currently. And so some of the things that might happen on those on-site visits is some use of the life course tools. That could include a trajectory completed with the individual or the group, in fact. Could also be completing an integrated STAR to just get to know what's going on and what's all out, what other resources are out there for the individual. It could be looking at those life domains also. And again, it could be that we are providing some suggestions for interventions that might be successful for participants. And one such would be if a person is having some attention-seeking behaviors, we might want to increase some positive interactions with staff. The third thing that could occur is some mental health information. I know that many of our community support providers struggle with getting the right support for mental health issues that our participants are struggling with. We also could be providing behavior support plan help and helping community support providers and case managers conduct some functional behavior analysis and get to the root of the problem that's happening. And those are just some suggestions of what might come out of those visits and support. And so the next slide here is talking about what happens when the support and technical assistance takes place.
So we want to emphasize here that, our focus is really to ensure the supports outlined in the request and throughout, and as the person makes progress and the progress is reported to our office, that the supports are delivered as they're outlined in those updates, and that the enhanced funding is used to promote positive outcomes for the person, and supports are implemented as described in that request and the progress reports. So as the team makes adjustments to those supports, we anticipate seeing that reflected at those intervals that Jamie described for each of the different kind of enhanced rate that the participant or participants might be part of. We will review the rate in conjunction with the 902 individual enhanced rate progress report, the DHS-DD 904, which is intended for those rates approved prior to June 1 of 2019, and for the DHS-DD 905, which are for those new groups established after June 1, 2019. So we'll be, on an individual basis, we'll be looking to, establish whether there were changes in staff ratios, the overall schedule that those enhanced supports are occurring, any changes in the duration or frequency, and our intention is really to make sure that as those supports evolve, that we continue to be supportive of the success that the team sees. So when a person's behavior decreases, for example, we don't automatically want to decrease or eliminate the enhanced rate that supports those, that makes it possible for those supports to occur. We want to make sure that what's making that success possible continues, but we do need to be able to validate, I guess, how that rate was calculated and what it's based upon. So we certainly have some accountability to our partners at the Department of Social Services, as well as Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So to speak then to the group, and Jamie spoke a little bit about this earlier as she was describing the different processes. When and if a person leaves an established group, the program specialist will follow up with the CSP to verify whether or not the vacancy in that group setting will be filled. If the CSP does not plan to fill that vacancy, here at the DHS level, we will reassess the group cost report, the most recent cost report we have available to us, and the rate will be adjusted to reflect that new group size. If a new person is added to that or fills that vacancy, I suppose, a significant change request would be submitted to reflect that person's address change, because the group rates are really based on that residence, that location of where those supports are provided. And the description on the significant change request should detail the reason for the person exiting and for the person entering those enhanced group supports. And if the vacancy will be filled, no further action is needed unless the vacancy then exceeds 90 days. We would need to probably take some action to reevaluate the rate after 90 days.
So we also included this slide to just summarize the different forms, because there's a lot of different forms and a lot of different numbers out there, so, and what their purpose is. So in our previous recording, we talked about the DHS DD 900, so, and that's the same number that's been used for requesting enhanced rate. We just now have a new form that's associated with it, and that's both individual or group. It doesn't matter. That's how you would request an enhanced rate. The DHS DD 902 is the individual progress and monitoring document we've talked about earlier, and that is again for anyone that's coming new into an enhanced rate from June 1st, 2019 and on. The third one there is the DHS DD 903, which is the Intervention and Support Specialist Referral, and that's an internal Division of Developmental Disability Use only document. DHS DD 904 is the monitoring document for enhanced rates, both individual and group, that came prior to June 1st, 2019. And then finally, the DHS DD 905 is for a group that is coming in, that's coming new, or new request, and that's from June 1st on, and so that's their progress and monitoring document. And finally, if you have questions, I know that we have one question. I'll let Julie do that one.
Sure. So we had a question from LifeQuest regarding the attachment for the individual rate request procedure. So this is in reference to the attachment of the policy memo 1903, where there are several rows describing the different roles and the interaction between those roles to from the time a request is initiated to the time it is approved or denied. So Pam asked the question whether or not the intervention and support specialist recommendations would be shared only with the program specialist, or if the community support providers would also have access to that information so they can be aware of what the intervention and support specialist observed, what their recommendations are, and just overall be in the loop. And that is certainly a change that we will make within the document. The intention is really that the program specialist assigned to the CSP remains a central point of contact. If we go beyond that and the ISS or Jamie as a clinical administrator start contacting the CSP, or the CSP starts contacting several people within our office, we have learned that over time that that's really how information gets missed or miscommunicated, and we just really want to keep that central to the program specialist.
And so if there are any more questions about today's presentation, or if there's assistance needed at any time during this process, please go ahead and contact me, Jamie Morris. My information is provided there. But you can also contact the program specialist that is working with you and is assigned to your agency. They will be able to either provide the information that you're requesting, or they'll be able to get that information.
Okay, and with that, that concludes our presentation today. I appreciate everyone's involvement and patience with all the technology glitches that we've experienced over the past couple webinar sessions. And reach out to Jamie or your assigned program specialist if you think of questions later. And we will be posting recordings, forms, and so presentations, the policy memo, and various forms to our DDD website. Thank you and have a good day.